Discipline can feel like such an elusive thing, and if you clicked on this video, then you probably struggle with discipline and want to be more disciplined. You may also be feeling a little hopeful that this video can help you, and you may be feeling a little skeptical as well. So I'm sure you're eager to hear these tips and what changed when I finally figured them out in my own life. And that's what we'll be talking about in this video today. And make sure you stick around until the end because I've included a third bonus tip that's really important and you want to make sure you don't miss that one. So I used to really struggle with discipline in a number of areas in my life. And one example from my 20s is that I really used to want to lose weight and get in shape. And this video isn't about weight loss. This is just an example from my own life in an area that I felt I needed a lot of discipline and really struggled to maintain consistency. So I really wanted to lose weight to be considered more attractive, to have an easier time buying cute clothes, and I guess I generally wanted to be thinner because I grew up in the 90s and that was kind of the social conditioning of that time. And so over the course of my 20s, I tried a ton of different diets ranging from the crazy lemonade diet to raw vegan and a bunch of other things in between, all with the hopes that one of them would be the answer to finally getting into shape and losing the weight that I wanted to lose. But I could never really stick to any of them long enough to see any results. And this is probably a good thing when it came to some of the diets like the crazy lemonade diet. And it wasn't until really this past year that I connected with wanting to get healthier, not skinnier or more attractive or whatever, but I really wanted to start to feel a lot better and I wanted to remain vital as I grew older, and I knew that now was the time to be setting that foundation to remain healthy as I got older. And so when I started seeing myself as someone who valued health and wellness, that's when things really started to change and my actions started to reflect that. So some of the changes that I've made include walking on average around 9,000 steps per day. I quit sugar and I posted a video about that up here that you can check out. I'm currently doing Simon Hill's 12-week health and longevity challenge. And a bunch of other really great changes have happened that I've been able to stick to once I really started to see myself as someone who valued health. So when I look back at this example, I can pull out a few lessons and I can also see a few misconceptions that I had when it came to discipline. Right off the bat, we can see an issue with how I was approaching things. My reasons for change were really shallow and I wasn't connecting to them. So I didn't have that intrinsic motivation to achieve what I wanted to achieve because my goals were like, buy cuter clothes and look better. And those just aren't long-lasting, sustaining reasons to make a big change in an area that a lot of people struggle with. So this is an example of my motivation being extrinsic, which means that it's motivated by external rewards such as praise or approval or etc., anything that's kind of outside of you. And when I finally connected with my value of health and wellness, I really connected to my own intrinsic motivation. And this means that I was connecting to something that I inherently enjoy and inherently find satisfying, and that's because it came from alignment with one of my values. So because in my 20s I really lacked that intrinsic motivation, this made having discipline and follow through very difficult. And it led to a pattern of kind of starting things and feeling optimistic and then stopping. And over time, this pattern of starting and stopping really led to like a sense of failure. And in the long term, it really led to me losing trust in myself and losing trust in following through on my word to the point where I didn't really want to commit to things because I didn't think I was going to follow through on them. And over this time, I really developed some misconceptions about discipline. So I really thought that discipline was something that was really hard and that it wasn't fun and that it wasn't going to be rewarding. And I also began to think that there were like two groups of people who had discipline and people who didn't have discipline, and that I was definitely one of those people that just didn't have discipline. And so it wasn't until I implemented the 2 tips that I'll be sharing with you shortly that everything started to change. One of the first things that changed is I was really able to transform my self-esteem and my self-concept, and I began to see myself as someone who could follow through on things. And another more obvious change was that I finally started making progress on the things that I wanted to make progress on. And this led to a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment in life. And so instead of feeling kind of low-key dissatisfied with the things that I wanted to change all the time, I was now feeling really satisfied and fulfilled because I knew that I was making progress towards things that were important to me. And I was able to really live up to the person that I wanted to be as well. And another positive thing that happened is that I really reduced my decision fatigue. So when it came to things in my life that were my goals that required discipline, those decisions were predetermined. I was showing up for those every day or every week or whatever I had kind of promised myself when I made that decision. And this is really important because I was one of those people that was sort of flowy and didn't want to commit to things. And I really felt that if I didn't feel like it in the moment, that was like a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. And what I've learned is that that's where discipline comes in. You've said you want to do this thing. You've said it's important for whatever your reasons are. And that means you're going to show up for it regardless of how you feel in the moment. So let's jump into the tips with tip number 1. When we look back at the example that I shared with you, we can see one of the first problems is that I wasn't really connected to my outcomes. I had really shallow reasons and it just didn't intrinsically motivate me. And this really tied into my misconception that discipline was hard and unenjoyable because I didn't have those intrinsic payoffs from doing what I was doing. So my first tip is to make sure that you have an intrinsic connection with the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And when you do this, it's really the difference between trying to roll a boulder up a mountain and trying to roll a boulder down a flat path. Neither option is going to be effortless, but when you connect with your identity and your values, you really remove that resistance and that mountain out of your path. So I have a video where I specifically share how to identify your values, and I'll link that up there. But one thing that's really important to consider with this is that you're identifying your values and not the values that you aspire to or the values of society or the values of your parents. It's really important that these are your values. And one of the traps that we can get into is looking at, let's say, like a list of values, and you're like, yeah, these ones sound good. And those are values that you may aspire to, and they aren't necessarily your specific values. And there's nothing wrong with not having all the values on the value sheet. You have the ones that you have. And in the video that I've linked, you can go through the exercise of finding out what your specific values are. Another thing you can consider is if your reasons for doing whatever you want to do connect to who you want to be as a person, or if they connect to who society tells you you should be. And you can ask yourself, will this outcome be fulfilling in the long term? Or is it related to instant gratification? Is it related to kind of a trend that I saw on social media and it seems like everyone's kind of doing this, so now I want to do it? Really question your motivations and why you want what you're trying to be disciplined around. So it's really important at this step to be honest with yourself about why you want what you want, and if that's intrinsically motivating. And you can do that through this video, or maybe you can even work with someone who can hold up that mirror for you and help you see what your motivations really are. And when it comes to identity, you can ask yourself, who do you want to be, and who will you be when you achieve your outcome? And what about that is inherently satisfying to me? So I recently released a video on how I quit sugar after being like a lifelong sugar addict. And that shift really happened when I connected to my values around health and wellness. I was really able to see a shift in my identity where I was now someone who valued health and wellness. I wasn't someone who was trying to quit sugar or like trying to eat better. I was someone who valued those things, and I acted in congruence with that identity. So once I had really stepped into that identity, it becomes really easy to make those decisions. Like, for example, does someone who values health and wellness eat a ton of sugar all day long? No, they don't. And so that's how your actions can really follow once you step into an identity that is in alignment with your values. Okay, let's jump into tip number 2. And you can see from my example that one of the things that happened over the course of my 20s is that I really lost trust with myself in the process and in my ability to be disciplined, which really led to the misconception that some people have discipline and some people don't. So my second tip is to start small. Discipline isn't something that you have or you don't have. Discipline is something that you need to work regularly to build. It's like a muscle that you need to work at in order to strengthen it. And in doing so, you can really start to rebuild your self-trust as well. So for me personally, one of the areas that was really accessible to start small as far as discipline was keeping my house tidy. So when we think about my value system, I'm someone that really values peace and order. And so a messy house or an untidy house is something that can really bother me. And so one of the areas that I started was wanting to be someone who made their bed every day. A few years ago, I had a friend that mentioned once that they make their bed every morning and they do not leave the house unless the house is presentable, because you never know when people could pop by and come over to your house. And that really struck a chord with me, and that was something that I could sense was my truth as well, and that it had just struck on one of my own personal values. And so at that time, I decided that I wanted to be someone who made their bed every morning as well. That's the identity that I wanted to step into. And of course, making your bed every morning is a relatively easy task. If you don't have a super complex bed with a ton of pillows, it's not going to take you very long to make your bed in the morning. So this is what I mean by starting small. This was something that I could show up every day for myself and get done in like 3 to 5 minutes, let's say. And that was just a way for me to be consistent and disciplined and build that discipline muscle and really start to show myself like you can show up for the things that you want to do. You can be disciplined. This is possible. And did I enjoy it in the moment every time? No, especially when I was rushing to work and already kind of late and I just wanted to get out of the house. But did it lead to long-lasting satisfaction? Yes. So discipline really means trading momentary discomfort for long-lasting satisfaction in your life. And these days, I feel like so many of us have it backwards. We just choose the momentary comfort and ultimately live a life that is kind of dissatisfying to us. And we seek instant gratification at the cost of our own happiness. So you have to ask yourself, do you want long-term satisfaction or long-term dissatisfaction? And discipline means doing the things that you told yourself you wanted to do because they would be satisfying or fulfilling, regardless of how you feel in that moment. It's really keeping that promise to yourself that you made when you decided to commit to whatever it is that you want to commit to. And chores are just a really great place to start. A lot of them can be really simple tasks that take almost no time at all, but they can really start building that discipline muscle. So this could look like putting your shoes away when you walk in the front door in like their specific spot instead of just kind of kicking them wherever. Or it could mean putting the keys in the key bowl or on a key hook or whatever instead of just tossing them wherever. And it could also mean taking that one extra second to put your dirty clothes in the hamper rather than on the floor or on that chair that seems to accumulate all of your dirty clothes. And these are just little moments of discomfort, like, oh, it's so much easier to just kick off my shoes. But if I take that 1 second to put them in their spot, now my house is tidy and now I know where my shoes are when I need to find them. And it's just that one tiny moment of discomfort when you probably would rather not do the thing that can lead to that long-term fulfillment of knowing that my shoes are where they go, my keys are where they go, the laundry is in the hamper, things like that. Okay, and here's the third bonus tip that I was telling you about at the beginning of the video. So discipline doesn't mean that you never miss a day. Life happens and things will get in the way. A recent example of this in my own life is that as part of the Simon Hill challenge that I mentioned, I've started adding more cardio and I'm doing the stairs by my house once a week. And really early on in that challenge, I got sick and I was so congested. I had a cold and I was just not able to exercise. And it also wouldn't have been good for me to push through and go do the stairs when I was feeling very sick. So there are times when you need to give yourself a little bit of grace and say, you know what, it's just not going to happen. But the habit and the discipline comes in to say, as soon as I'm feeling better, this is going to happen. This one little thing isn't going to knock me off track because I'm disciplined. And so as soon as I can, I'm going to be going back and doing this thing. So to recap what we talked about, tip number 1 was to have intrinsic motivation when it comes to your goal or the thing that you want to be disciplined towards. And this means connecting your identity and your values to what you're doing. Tip number 2 was to start small and start building that discipline muscle and rebuilding any lost trust you may have with yourself. And my third bonus tip was to keep in mind that discipline doesn't mean that you never miss a day. Life will happen, but discipline means that you get back as soon as you can into doing what you said you would do. So I hope that you really enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. I love hearing back from everyone. I hope this video has given you 2 digestible tips to help you start being more disciplined in your own life. And if you like this type of content, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every week. And with that, I will see you in the next video.